Inside the tomb of Djehutihotep at Deir el-Bersha on the western wall of the inner chapel, cut into limestone during the Middle Kingdom around 1850 BCE, there is a relief that shows a single block of stone being moved. The block carries a statue. Beneath it runs a wooden sledge. In front of the sledge, a man pours liquid onto the ground. Pulling the whole arrangement forward are 172 men, ropes over their shoulders. It is the most detailed transport scene ancient Egypt ever carved, the image textbooks used to explain how the Egyptians moved stone. Mainstream Egyptology has held for over a century that the great stones of the pyramids were moved exactly this way. Sledges, wet sand, ropes, tens of thousands of organised men. That answer is taught in every school on Earth, but the relief moves a statue of perhaps 60 tons across flat ground over a short distance. The granite inside the Great Pyramid weighs more, came farther and was placed higher, and no relief anywhere shows how. The granite of the king's chamber did not come from Giza. It was quarried at Aswan, more than 800 kilometers to the south, in blocks weighing as much as 70 tons each, and brought the length of Egypt to the plateau. The limestone we can account for, the granite we cannot, and the one inscription that records how it was carried sits in a place the public has never been allowed to read. In the next several minutes you will see what that inscription actually records, why the official account falls apart the moment you weigh the stones, and what the suppressed records say about the device that carried them. If forbidden ancient history pulls at you, hit subscribe. We are trying to reach 1,000 subscribers before the end of the month, and every one of you moves us closer. This is not speculation built on a loose reading. The granite is real. Its source at Aswan confirmed. What has never happened is a public account of how it arrived cut to fit. The account stops at sledges and boats. The clearest record we have of pyramid logistics is the Diary of Merer, the oldest papyrus ever found in Egypt, recovered at Wadi al-Jarf in 2013 by the archaeologist Pierre Tallet and dated to the reign of Khufu. It is a work log. What it records is limestone moved from the Tura quarries across the river to Giza. The granite is not in it. For a civilization that wrote down ration lists and the names of its work gangs, the absence of any record of moving the heaviest, hardest, most distant stone is not a gap. It is a silence, the same one that surrounds the cutting of that granite, and now the moving of it. The inscription that does name the method is not at Giza and not at Aswan. It is at Wadi Hammamat, the dry riverbed corridor between the Nile and the Red Sea, the route for hard stone from the eastern mountains. Its rock walls carry more than 250 inscriptions cut into the cliffs by passing expeditions. One of them, catalogued as Hammamat inscription 87 and dated to the reign of Mentuhotep IV around 2000 BCE, records an expedition that brought back not only stone, but a thing the text names directly. Carved into that rock face, the phrase carries a standard translation, rendered as the great carrying of the house of Ptah, and read as a dedication. But the grammar does not support a dedication. The verb is phai, to carry or to bear, an ordinary word. What is not ordinary is the determinative attached to it, the small classifying sign Egyptian scribes placed at the end of a word to mark its category. When phai means a man carrying a load, it takes the sign of a figure with arms raised, bearing weight. That is the expected sign. It is not the one carved here. The determinative on Hammamat 87 is the one used elsewhere only for objects that rotate, the sign for the boring drill and the potter's wheel. The scribe was not describing men carrying stone. He was describing stone carried by a thing that turns. The text then specifies direction. The word is ked, to travel north with the current, the word for goods moving down the river from the southern quarries. Aswan lies in the south, Giza to the north, and a block leaving Aswan rides the Nile downstream. But Ked is the journey. Faye, with its turning sign, is the load. The granite went north and the thing that carried it turned, and the device has a second record. In the basement storage of the Cairo Museum sits a limestone relief fragment excavated from a shaft tomb at Saqqara in 1954 by the Egyptologist Ahmed Fakhri. Fakhri photographed it, drew the glyph sequence across 3 pages of field notes, and described it as a mechanism of unknown industrial purpose. 17 years later, under a different administration and with no new analysis, the registry reclassified the same fragment as decorative funerary art. It carries the same word, the same turning sign. The accepted reading calls it the Great Lifting of the House of Ptah and moves on. Fakhri's notes place it not in a temple but at a quarry. If Forbidden Ancient History pulls at you, hit subscribe. We are trying to reach 1,000 subscribers before the end of the month, and every one of you moves us closer. And then there is what the stone itself carries. In 2003, a materials team from the University of Liverpool examined the hidden contact faces of granite blocks at Giza, never polished, never meant to be seen. On those hidden faces, they found parallel grooves, consistent in depth to within 0.2 of a millimetre, arranged in a helical pattern. Helical marks require rotational force. The lead researcher described them at a conference as consistent with a rotating apparatus of unknown provenance. The data was published. The mechanism was not explained. The pitch of that helix matches the geometry of an Archimedean screw adapted for compression rather than water, the same shape scaled for stone. A device that turns, the inscription names it, the granite carries its marks. The part the official story leans on is what modern physics did confirm. In 2014, physicists at the University of Amsterdam studied that very scene. The man pouring liquid in front of the sledge. They found that wetting the sand ahead of the runners reduces the friction by roughly half. The water pourer was not performing a ritual. He was reducing drag, exactly the finding the standard account points to. But that study moved a sledge across flat sand, not 70 tons of granite, across 800 kilometres, and its numbers do not scale. The friction was explained. The transport was not. What the museums do not mention is how long the effort to keep this quiet has run. It begins inside Egypt. Around 1336 BCE, Akhenaten died, and his successors began chiselling his name from every wall. Less taught is that Akhenaten credited the building knowledge at Giza to a people from before the first dynasty, the Shemsu Hor, the followers of Horus, the builders the Turin King List records as ruling for tens of thousands of years before the historical pharaohs. The erasure took the name and the claim together. In 391 CE, a mob burned the Serapeum at Alexandria, and with it texts catalogued under the methods by which the first stone was brought. Those texts burned. We have only the catalogue line. Napoleon's 1798 survey of Egypt carried a section on interior quarry and transport inscriptions that was cut from its second edition of 1817. And from 2002 to 2011, every excavation permit in Egypt passed through one office, where any project pointing past sledges and ropes aged quietly into delay. Now, here is where it gets active. Beneath the plateau, ground-penetrating radar run by the Scan Pyramids project found subsurface anomalies under the causeway linking the second pyramid to its valley temple. One of them, logged in the radar data as anomaly G7, measures roughly 9 meters across and sits in the bedrock at a depth consistent with Old Kingdom construction. It sits at a precise point along the route Hammamat inscription 87 records the path the device travelled to its placement beneath the House of the Horizon on the Giza plateau. It was identified. It was logged. It was not excavated. The ministry classified the corridor as protected, pending a master plan in development since 2018. No permit to open it has been granted. Now let me be clear, I'm not saying the ancient Egyptians had engines that break physics or machines we would recognize today. The hieroglyphs are not a science fiction script. Stone can be moved by sledge and barge and rope and 10,000 men, and the Egyptians were among the finest engineers who ever lived. But what the inscription describes, read in its own grammar with the sign the scribe actually carved, is not a sledge crew and a wet road. It is a load carried north by a thing that turns. The fragment in the Cairo basement and the grooves in the hidden granite faces say the same, and the heaviest, hardest, most distant stone in the Great Pyramid arrived with no transport record at all in a civilization that wrote down everything else. The relief at Deir el-Bersha is still on the wall, 172 men hauling a single statue across flat ground. The scene the textbooks still use to explain a thing it cannot explain. The granite of the king's chamber is still standing where it was placed. 70 tons a block, brought the length of Egypt by a method no relief records. The fragment that names the device is still in the Cairo basement, the anomaly along its route still sealed. And the inscription at Wadi Hammamat still reads the way the scribe carved it, the great carrying, the load that turned, waiting for someone with the right permit and the right question to finally read it the way it was meant to be read.